As soon as we had this one thing set up, we were just putting out page after page after page like there was no tomorrow. Welcome back, I'm Chris, I make movies, and this is how I managed to make the script for my first feature film. So in the first video that I put out on this channel, I mentioned how I had a bunch of different scripts already written and ready to go before finally settling on this one to actually be the first feature that I make. Now there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I think it's important that we talk about it because it touches on something that I think is really important, especially for independent filmmakers, and something that I don't think gets mentioned enough in the filmmaker community. So at the time of recording this video, including the movie that I just finished shooting, I have about 6 different projects that are ready to be pitched in some way, shape or form. Those include 2 sci-fi projects, 1 comedy, 2 dramas, and 1 period piece / dark comedy sci-fi type of thing. It sounds complicated, but it's really cool, I promise. So generally as a filmmaker, and especially as an independent filmmaker, it's a really good idea to have at least 2 projects on the back burner because you never know when you're going to run into somebody that's going to be able to help you with that project down the line. Picture this, okay? You're at a fancy event. You're all dressed up in black and white. She's dressed in that dress she likes. And your friend introduces you to producer McMoneybags. And get this, he's told McMoneybags all about that project that you just released. He's impressed. Then he asks you, "So what else you got, kid?" Do you just want to say, "Oh, well, I'm kind of in the, exploratory stage for new ideas at the moment"? Or do you want to be like Justin Timberlake, whip out your treatments and say, "Let me show you a few things"? McMoneybags stares at you in disbelief and he says, "Stop, let me get a good look at it." Okay, I'll stop now, I promise. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look through these scripts and I'm going to explain why exactly I decided not to go with them for my debut feature. Let's take a look. So when I was in uni, I did my honors in script writing and it was a really great experience. I loved the people that I was working with, the lecturer was great, and the best part, the absolute best part, is you were forced to write. So with the idea in the back of my mind that I wanted to have my first feature film done, I decided that I was going to write a feature-length movie script as my final exam project. So I was toiling away the entire year on that script. And by the time it was done, I had a full 80 pages ready. Or at least I thought I did. Turns out I wasn't formatting the movie script correctly. I was still using Word at the time to write it, and somehow the formatting didn't match up, so I had something closer to 60 pages.
I read about did you say want?
Oh goodness. I don't like that script anymore. A lot has happened in the time since I wrote it, and I feel like I've grown not only as a writer, but as a person. And the script in its current form doesn't really reflect that. I don't know, if I get a pair of fresh eyes to look at it and help me rework it, then maybe. But for now, I'm gonna put it away somewhere where nobody can see it. There it goes. Woo-hoo! Now this one, funny enough, I thought this was going to be my first feature. I'd gotten a couple of local name actors interested in the project, I had a screening deal going with the local cinema, we were even about to shoot a proof of concept for our initial investors. And then suddenly, the location that we were going to be shooting the proof of concept in, which also happens to be where the majority of the movie was going to be shot, couldn't use it anymore. I think Austin McConnell said it best when he said,
"Losing your location on the day, nay, the moment of, will absolutely cripple a low-budget film for a variety of reasons."
And that's exactly what it did. I was so upset with how that project fell apart, I just decided to shelve it. Couldn't even look at it for a while. But like I said, you know, I've grown a lot since then, as a writer, as a person, etc., etc. And the more I think about it, the more I'd like to give that project another shot. Plus, with all the experience that I've gotten recently with securing locations because of the feature that I just finished, I'm pretty sure I could prevent that from happening again. Still a cool concept though. It's a fun mix between Napoleon Dynamite and Two Broke Girls.
Nope, can't. You touch them. Sorry, flu season, no health care.
So I might revisit it. But for now, goes on the back burner. So after finishing Project 2, I had a major case of writer's block. I was still able to write a couple of short films, but I couldn't get myself to focus on one big narrative project. Be it because of stress or family stuff, I don't know, I couldn't get anything off the ground. That is, until around April last year. I was 24 at the time, floating between jobs, a bit of video editing here, some content writing there, and then suddenly I remembered. I made a promise to myself. I promised that by the time I turned 25, I'm gonna have my first feature done. And then it hit me. That deadline that I set for myself years ago was creeping closer and closer and closer. So I got to work on writing a new script. And this time I focused on working with locations and actors that I knew 100% I could rely on. Anything else that I needed, I was gonna make up for with that I found at the thrift store and miniature models for anything else I needed. So coming in at just over 80 minutes, or about 80 pages, for real this time, I had written my longest feature script that I genuinely cannot wait to start production on. The only thing is, if I want to do it right, I'm gonna need a little bit of money and a lot of time. Right now,
in terms of money, we have no money.
So until I can scrounge up the cash to make it happen, I'm more than happy to put it on the back burner. And finally, we've got the Goldilocks project. Not too long, not too expensive, just right. I honestly wasn't even planning on writing the script. I'd written Project 3, I worked on a couple of drafts, and I was happy to start production with that in 2025. But then I saw a little movie called It Just Takes Time. Now honestly, I could make a whole video about Joel Haver and his movies and a bunch of YouTubers that inspire me to make movies. And I am. It's coming out next week. Subscribe, by the way. But for now, let's focus on It Just Takes Time. So for those of you who don't know, Joel Haver, an independent filmmaker who's kind of made a name for himself with these AI rotoscope 2D animations, has made a challenge for himself in 2024. And that challenge was to come out of the year with 12 feature-length films. At the time of recording this, he's got about 9 that have come out. So it's looking a little doubtful, but still, the fact that he had 9 feature-length films come out in one single year is a massive accomplishment. It Just Takes Time is one of the movies that's come out of that bunch, and in my opinion, it's the best one. This movie came out a couple of days after my 25th birthday, and I was completely caught off guard by how much it moved me. It reminded me how you can have an emotionally fulfilling movie with just a handful of actors, a couple of locations, and really not much else. The way that Joel Haver was able to so candidly explore the concept of grief in this movie made me wonder, what would I be able to explore so effectively if I had the same type of restrictions? And that's how the new script was born. So you can ask any writer, and they will tell you that they almost never get an idea for a new project the same way. But one way that I've been able to get ideas pretty consistently is through what I like to call the Big Bang method. So the Big Bang method is where I'll just be walking around, doing my thing, and then boom, suddenly this scene flashes in my head. It's usually something that I can picture as visually striking or emotionally interesting, and then I take a deeper look into that moment. With this movie, for example, I had a glimpse of somebody running to catch the train at a seaside railway, and then I started asking questions like, where is the train going? Why is he trying to catch that train specifically? Is he sad that he missed it? Does he not know the train schedule? Is he maybe from out of town? And you can already see how those questions start to flesh out that initial moment and kind of create a world around it. And if you allow yourself to just fall through that rabbit hole for long enough, you'll eventually end up with the main character and you'll find out what it is that they want. This is the foundation of a story. Now you just need to figure out what happens between a character wanting to have / be / do a thing and that character having / being / doing that thing. And that's how I worked out the outline for this movie's story. I then worked out which locations I had access to / needed for the story to make it visually interesting, and before I knew it, I had a list of scenes and what needed to happen in each scene. And once I had all of this, it was a really quick process. I went from having one single flash of an idea to a full script within 10 days. But how? Improv. So I've actually used improvisation in a good number of my projects. Underripe, the first short film of mine to be accepted for a film festival, was actually improvised on the spot with a loose plot line to help guide things along. The same can be said for The Root of the Problem, which came out a year later. But one thing that I quickly realized was becoming a problem when it came to filming on the spot is the fact that it was making continuity a nightmare. So I immediately knew that wasn't going to work on set for this feature. I decided to sit down with my co-star and improvise the scenes that his character, Rian, would have with my character, Andrew. Luckily, this was quite a substantial part of the film, so we were able to get some form of dialogue for pretty much every scene of the movie fairly quickly. So I then took the dialogue that we improvised and I tweak it down just to make sure that it keeps the authenticity of the scene without making it feel too aimless. And I've got to say, once we started improvising, it was the weirdest, most rewarding experience. As soon as we had this one thing set up, we were just putting out page after page after page like there was no tomorrow. And that's how I ended up with the script for this project. It's a realistic, down-to-earth drama, focusing on family dynamics and the daily struggles of a man living with autism. I know it's not exactly box office dynamite, but I think it has the potential to be something really important for a lot of people. So if I can give a few tips from my experience, it would be this. Write what you know. Now, I know that's a cliche tip. Everybody says this, but they say it because it's true. Your first feature isn't going to be perfect. I've already made peace with that, and you should too if you're going to be taking this type of journey. You can only know so much before you actually go on set and shoot. So try and keep the story about something that you truly care about and actually have experience with. This is going to make your writing experience much less painful down the line. Make sure you have at least your base location secured. When you're writing your first feature, I know it can be tempting to have all these different locations put in to make it so much more interesting. This building, that office, that hospital, that school. The possibilities when you're writing are endless. But just try and keep these locations at a minimum. And most importantly, have them be easily accessible to you. Now, this doesn't mean that every scene has to be in a random apartment, but say for example, you have a scene that you know is going to take place outdoors. Instead of having some big national park in mind, try to see if you can rewrite the script to have it take place in a park that's local to you. Maybe your city has some cool historical district that you can get some shots in. Try to make a scene around that. Always try to think of an alternative location for wherever it is you're filming. Trust me, you'll be so glad that you took the time to secure another location for when something inevitably goes wrong. Setting deadlines is a blessing, not a curse. Think about how many concepts you have floating around in your head. Think about how you haven't taken the time to write those concepts down because there's no rush. Before anybody else gets involved in your project, you are the first person that you report to. If you don't put pressure on yourself to get your project out there, nobody else is going to do it for you. And that's a fact. Writing a feature isn't about getting it right on the first try. It's about showing up, learning from your mistakes, and pushing through to the next challenge. I'm Chris. I make movies. Have a good one.